Hello, our topic for today is Pisces. Is Pisces a mystic? Does Pisces tend to be a victim? Or, as I'm going to suggest, the essence of Pisces is that it's eclectic. Now, what we usually hear about Pisces is that something along the lines of this. It's intuitive, dreamy, not so interested in the practical affairs, more interested in the idealistic and the fantastic things. It's a sign of poets, artists, and dreamers. And these poets, artists, and dreamers are sometimes deceived because their head is in the sky and their feet are not on the ground. Okay, so we have a clear idea of what Pisces is. Now, is it true? Okay, and how do we know if it's true or not? How do we know if astrology works? How do we know what Pisces means? Well, let's try looking. And by looking, I don't mean just what's called convenient sampling, which is charts that I happen to look at of friends and family and famous people, but instead we can look a little more carefully using something called extreme case sampling. Now, don't let the fancy words scare you off, but basically what this extreme case sampling means in this case is we're going to analyze all the charts that are found in a database that have tons of planets in Pisces. That's it. By looking at all of the charts that are extremely Piscean, what we've done is we've forced ourselves to analyze those charts, and this does what's called in research methodology controls for bias, which just means you don't get to decide what the data is. You're forcing yourself to analyze the data that's produced by the research method. It's a very, very powerful way to be more evidence-based and to see if your ideas really work. So we make up a formula, such as this one that I used, where if the Sun, Moon, Ascendant, or ruler of the Ascendant is in Pisces, we'll give it 5 points. If Mercury, Venus, and Mars is in Pisces, we give it 3 points. If Jupiter and Saturn are in Pisces, 2 points. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto get 1 point. It ends up that the details of the formula are not that important. If somebody has lots of planets in Pisces, they're going to come out as the extreme Pisces people. Now, here are 2 images that I got from images.google.com of Pisces. As you know, the symbol of Pisces is this thing here, 2 curves. Here it's a little artistically rendered, but usually it's sort of symmetric, the 2 curves and a bar that connects it. And this is often related to the idea shown on the left here that there are 2 fish connected by a cord, or I'm going to refer to it as a rope. So in my research, what I found is that this image seems to have a lot to do with the meaning of Pisces, even more than the ideas that we have nowadays about Pisces. But as we continue through this, you'll see what I mean about how this image relates to the meaning of Pisces. I just wanted to put that in front of you now because it's a useful way for remembering what the essence of Pisces is. 2 fish swimming around means 2 relatively independent fish moving around. I would imagine the cord is bigger than this. A rope that connects them so they have some independence, but they're still bound together as they swim through the ocean of life. Okay, so my interpretation of Pisces is that Pisces is eclectic. Pisces, first paragraph, Pisces integrates seemingly disparate things in almost any endeavor. So the 2 fish go out, explore, find out what they find, and tries to integrate them, not a tight integration, a loose integration symbolized by, I'll call it a rope that connects the 2 fish. So typically Pisces incorporates different cultural and ethnic styles rather than following one clear tradition. So again, the image of the fish going exploring out with different ethnic styles, different cultural styles, and trying to make some connection between them. Paragraph number 2, science, art, and religion tend to flow into one another rather than remain separate topics. So it's eclectic. Pisces pulls from different things and tries to make relationships between them without forcing them into a tight coherence, but tries to build a relationship between these seemingly different things. So again, you can see how the image of the two fish connected by a rope is a good image of what Pisces is. So Pisces, third paragraph, Pisces incorporates different things naturally and intuitively rather than through some clear analysis or a decision that's made. So it's a water sign. Pisces is exploring naturally and intuitively and making connections between things. So bottom line, Pisces typically brings seemingly unrelated elements together. Now, this is a radical idea that the fourth paragraph here that many astrologers will not agree with, but I'm going to propose it anyway, is that Pisces actually is not more artistic and less scientific than other signs. It does approach science in a sensitive way, in an intuitive kind of way, and also it approaches art from different perspectives. Pisces approaches everything from different perspectives. So it's a slightly different idea of what Pisces is all about. Now, we're going to see is more important than what my idea is or somebody else's idea is this evidence-based approach to determining what Pisces may mean, if anything. It's possible zodiac signs don't work. So here I am restating here on this slide what I've just mentioned. To remember the meaning of Pisces, think of the image of the two fish connected by a rope. The intuitive wandering through the ocean of life, exploring and incorporating what the fish find. It tries to make a connection between what it finds. So Pisces builds its sense of reality in an eclectic manner, sometimes holding together seemingly contradictory or opposite views in a tenuous and fluid rather than rigid system. So in that paragraph I've stated a lot of the essential ingredients of Pisces. And lastly on this slide, Pisces is soft and accommodating, which has some similarity to the idea of them being prone to be victims. I don't think the proneness to being a victim is actually true. It is soft and accommodating, but Pisces can be persistent, determined, and clear. It's not necessarily spaced out, as often described. So it can be clear in its striving to explore, understand, and hold together in some reasonable relationship the different things it discovers. Okay, so this is controversial. The whole field of astrology is controversial. Whether astrology works at all is controversial. Introducing different meanings can be controversial. What I'm suggesting here in this tutorial video is that one way through all this controversy would be to use a more evidence-based approach and look at the data. So, analyzing over 17,000 charts that are in the Series 2.0 software, there are 5 people who score 21 or higher using the formula that I used. And these are the 5 people. We're going to look at their charts, and this is what they were known for. One is a printmaker, caricaturist, painter, and sculptor. He's in the artistic areas. Another is a historian, and this historian focused on his area of specialization was a relationship of religion and homosexuals. Well, here, right off the bat, you can get this feeling of Pisces, the connecting very, very different things. An artist who works in many different areas, religion and homosexuals, not two different things that we usually associate with each other. A third one is a cardinal. He was an archbishop and cardinal in the Catholic Church. Another is a physicist and mathematician. Another is a tennis player. So they cover a pretty broad spectrum of things, as is often the case. And I don't expect them to be primarily intuitives, religious people, although 2 of them are involved in religion out of 5, which is a lot. But overall, the main thing I'm expecting is that all of them are eclectic and pull together seemingly disparate things in their approach to life. And we're looking for an idea that will fit all 5. 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5 or even 4 out of 5 is not good enough, because these are the most extreme Pisces people out of a huge number, over 17,000 charts. These are the extreme 5. So now there were other people who scored 21, 4 others, but I couldn't find a lot of biographical information. So here's 4 other people. You could do your own research and see if you can get more information about them. and they would be included as well as people who scored at the very highest score. And also, the cutoff of 21 points is somewhat arbitrary. If you go down to 20 points, you find these two people, interestingly, both are boxers, not something we associate with Pisces. And also these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who I found less biographical information about. But just to give you some idea, if we go down to the next level of extreme Pisces people, and also just to give you some idea, going down to 19 points, notice these people are also extreme Pisces, and these can also be studied. Interestingly, we have 2 Catholic priests, 2 more. So Catholic priests and Catholicism and astrology is connected with Pisces. It's a curious coincidence, makes us think there is something to this Pisces, but can we find a meaning of Pisces that would fit all of the people, including the ones who, like Georg Ohm, who we'll describe in a minute, who's a scientist. So anyway, there's a list of people who I did find biographical information for, also extreme Pisces, and here's additional ones. You could stop this video and write down those names and research these people if you wanted to extend the research that I've done. I'm going to focus on the top 5. Now here's the first one, Honoré Daumier. Well, I'm an American, I'm probably not pronouncing the French name very well, but anyway, there's his chart, and he has Sun, Moon, Jupiter, Mars and Pluto and Mercury all in Pisces, and Leo is rising, so the ruler of the ascendant, the Sun, is in Pisces. So he is about as extreme as you can possibly ever get for being Piscean. Is he really Piscean? Well, here's the information about him. As I mentioned, he's a printmaker, caricaturist, painter, sculptor. He's prolific with these different media. One of his things he worked on and is known for is the caricatures and his sarcastic critiques of politicians and other people. And in terms of being prolific, he produced over 500 paintings, 4,000 lithographs, 1,000 wood engravings, 1,000 drawings, and 100 sculptures. He was a prolific draftsman. He was perhaps best known for his caricatures of political figures and satires on the behavior of his countrymen, although posthumously the value of his painting has also been recognized. So that's a quote from Wikipedia. So he combined art and social critiques. He worked with different media. He blended insights from different perspectives in his different creative works. So you see this with Pisceans. They work in multiple areas or multiple ideas, pull them together. Notice he's very persistent. He works hard. So Pisces is not necessarily spacey and lazy and so on. So his passion to express himself with technical expertise, great creativity, and social conscience demonstrates his Piscean inclination to fuse different aspirations and concepts in his works. He did not follow a simple path and lineage. That's the bottom line of Pisces. They don't follow a simple, direct path. He was eclectic. He was also very determined. So these are the qualities you get of Pisces. Sometimes we try to squeeze too much out of the zodiac signs. Basically, what you're going to get from Pisces is that they're eclectic, they draw from different sources, and they try to build connections, loose connections between them without forcing connections. So that's exactly what he does. He doesn't force it into a fusion. He works with different ideas. His different experiences inform each other, and he explores these related areas. It's a typical Piscean lifestyle. Okay. Now, if you think, gee, that's not enough, my belief is that we get more information from the aspects, the relationships between the planets, to give the details of a person's life. So our theory fits Daumier very well. Next person is John E. Boswell. Let's look at his chart for a moment. He has Virgo rising, so the ruler of Virgo is Mercury in Pisces, along with the Sun and Moon and Mars. Now remember, only one out of about 144 people will have Sun and Moon in a sign, so that alone puts them at the top 1%. Then we have the ruler of the ascendant and another inner planet in Pisces. This really is extraordinarily extreme emphasis on a zodiac sign. So he must fit some of the qualities of Pisces. So let's find out what Boswell is all about. Well, quoting again from Wikipedia, he's a prominent historian and professor at Yale University. Many of Boswell's studies focus on the issues of religion and homosexuality, specifically Christianity and homosexuality. He was a medieval philologist. If you don't remember what philologist is, it's a study of language in written historical sources. Boswell read or spoke 17 languages. That's amazing. He received his doctorate from Harvard in 1975, joined the Yale University history faculty. So, Christianity and homosexuality are seemingly unrelated. Boswell brought them together. Speaking 17 languages certainly going to help you become cross-cultural and eclectic. And he found a historical basis for homosexuality within Christianity, or at least he claims to have done so. So he built a connection where most people do not see one. Now note, Christianity and homosexuality were personally important to him. He converted to Catholicism. He died of AIDS, so I think presumably he was most likely homosexual or bisexual. So keep in mind that Pisces is a dual sign, the two fish, just like Gemini. We think of Gemini as being dual, exploring different things. And here we have Christianity and homosexuality, two different things, being explored and being tied together. I think that the modern idea of Neptune ruling Pisces distorts the meaning of Pisces by putting so much emphasis on these Neptunian qualities of being spacey and relaxed and so on. I'm not saying that Neptune doesn't rule Pisces. I don't know about that, but I certainly don't think that those qualities are as strong in Pisces as often believed. And actually looking at data and doing an evidence-based approach supports this conclusion, and that's what I think is really important, that we look at the data. Now here's our third case of the five. Dionigi Tettamanzi, I guess you would pronounce it. Let's look at his chart, sorry. He has over here in the 12th house, again, double Pisces, Sun and Moon. The ruler of the rising sign, which is Aries, is also in Pisces at the very, very end of Pisces, and Mercury's in Pisces. So again, he's double Pisces with another inner planet in Pisces and another planet at the very end of Pisces. Just the Sun and Moon alone makes him an extreme Piscean person. Well, is he? Well, from the usual interpretations of Pisces, he is a cardinal. He was a cardinal. He was an archbishop in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is associated with Pisces, so we don't have to introduce a lot of new ideas to see some relationship to Pisces. But in addition to those observations about Tettamanzi, here's a quote also from Wikipedia. Tettamanzi has declared that the goal of a company is not only to create a profit for the shareholders, but that the company has to be a community of women and men that work together to satisfy the needs of the people involved in the company. Let me interrupt there. Again, we see the Pisces connecting different things, that free enterprise and social responsibility need to be brought together. A lot of people have emphasized that. He's not the first one, but still we see the Piscean tendency to try to make connections between seemingly different things. That free enterprise often emphasizes a profit motive. He's not denying that. He doesn't become a socialist and say you can't have that, and that there are shareholders and they can make a profit, but we need to do both. So his conclusion is typical Piscean. We don't have to choose one or the other. We don't have to build a tight, clear synthesis. We can have different things that seem contradictory work together. So I just want to point out that his conclusion and perspective is classic Piscean perspective. He also affirmed that a person needs to have stability in his work in order to be able to plan his life. In his speech to the diocese in the day of St. Ambrose in 2008, he said that the Muslims have the right to build their mosque in cities of mainly Catholic countries. In his speech to the city on St. Ambrose of 2010, he reaffirmed that all immigrants in Italy are not criminals. Oh boy, terrible typo here. Not all of the immigrants in Italy are. I'm sorry, that is right. He reaffirmed that not all of the immigrants in Italy are criminals. Okay, so cultural diversity. He makes a statement about immigrants. This is Piscean perspective. Interest in cross-cultural relationships. Allowing different things to coexist. He focuses on this. A lot of people are just going to ignore these issues and not be interested in them. So some of the things that were cited as being major interests in this very short article, I'm not cherry picking here, there wasn't a lot said about him, just using, for example, the Wikipedia article. The things that were emphasized had the emphasis on cross-cultural, allowing differences to coexist. Muslims can build their mosques in mainly Catholic countries. This should be allowed. So again, we see everything that he's focusing on, emphasizing the coexistence of seemingly disparate things, a very Piscean approach. So I think you're going to find this is consistent with Pisces, that they will pursue areas without denying the opposite, without denying the alternative, allowing that to coexist with it, the two fish exploring the ocean of life. Here's a scientist, Georg Ohm. He has the ruler of the ascendant is Saturn, and it's in Pisces, along with Sun, Venus and Mars, and Mercury. So he's not double Pisces. His moon is in Scorpio, but the ruler of the ascendant is in Pisces, along with three other inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and the Sun. Extreme Pisces emphasis in his chart. So, Georg Ohm, this is from this website here. I'll just read this quickly to give it a perspective on who Ohm is. Ohm is best remembered for his formulation of Ohm's law, which defines the relationship between electrical resistance, electric force, and electric current. So he's a physicist. He's also a mathematician. This was an important discovery made in the field of science, as it symbolized the true beginning of electrical circuit analysis. What is interesting, and this word ohm is used, named after him, as one of the things that you measure in electrical circuits. What is interesting to note is that Ohm wasn't the only scientist who was trying to develop this relationship. There were many other researchers prior to Ohm who tried to establish the relationship but failed. Ohm, with his philosophical arguments and the physical reality of experiments, proved his hypothesis. So he did experiments. He was an experimental scientist. He was also a mathematician, and he also had certain philosophical perspectives that all became part of his views on this. Just like other scientists, his ideas were rejected, but Ohm was not the one to be disheartened. His strong willpower backed his research, which later was not only accepted, but made a law in physics. So his discoveries and his ideas were not greeted typically with enthusiasm. It took a lot of persistence and time for his discoveries to be recognized. So he was persistent. He had very low-paying jobs. This, by the way, is similar to Daumier, who was also not wealthy and did not have lots of resources. Both of them persisted. Ohm did a lot of teaching and tutoring while he conducted his experiments and developed his theories. So he was a mathematician and he conducted scientific experiments. What is Piscean about this? None of this sounds Piscean in the traditional sense. Where's the imagination? Where's the vision? Where's the spaciness? Where's the intuition? He's a grounded scientist. So is he Piscean? Well, paragraph number 1 here, he did combine mathematics, experimentation, philosophical and theoretical speculation. This was not as common at the time he lived as it is now, especially the application of mathematical models. So he did integrate philosophical, mathematical, and experimental information into a coherent system. Coherent systems are not that Piscean, however. Pisces usually just has more seemingly unrelated things that it connects together. So to me, this is still not quite Piscean. Now, from Wikipedia, it states that in the preface of his work, he wrote a book. He wrote several books. So in the preface of one of his works, he stated that he hoped to write a second and third volume. So he wrote a first volume, hoped to write a second and third, and if God gives me length of days for it, a fourth. Well, it's kind of cute that he references God. Some people do this more metaphorically than literally. But then the next sentence in Wikipedia is also interesting. However, on finding that an original discovery recorded in his book was being anticipated by a Swedish scientist, he did not publish it, stating, quote, "The episode has given a fresh and deep sense from my mind to the saying, man proposes and God disposes." So here we see him taking an interesting reaction, whereas many people might fight or pursue or stand up for what they found while somebody else is working on similar ideas. He's kind of backs out of this, doesn't publish his book, which is very Piscean because it is soft, it is gentle, it does allow different things to coexist. And he mentions God again here. Man proposes and God disposes. This sense of a larger whole, that there's something beyond science, that there seems to be some greater perspective. I write here a larger design and a greater force, while he focuses on specific scientific discoveries. So I think this is the Piscean aspect of Ohm, which is that he does have a religious perspective. He does have an interest in the greater truth of everything, while at the same time ironing out, analyzing, and coming up with specific conclusions and concepts in science and specific law, Ohm's law, for how things work. Note that he was technical and scientific rather than primarily intuitive and creative, but I think we can see the Piscean tendency to allow seemingly disparate things, a belief in an overall design, a religious perspective, at the same time that he works through the details of science, and he doesn't adopt the extreme scientific empirical view, which is against religion and against a higher purpose and against God disposing of your little things that you propose. So he holds both of those things together in his mind simultaneously. I think if we research Georg Ohm's life in more detail, we'd find that this large religious perspective is very important for him. Now, last person on our list is Dick Savitt. He's a tennis player, and he has Leo rising, 25 degrees of Leo rising. The ruler of Leo is the sun. It's in Pisces, along with the moon, so he's double Pisces, and he also has Mercury, Jupiter, and Uranus. So he has one other inner planet, and then Jupiter and Uranus as well, all in Pisces. So another extreme Piscean. According to this evidence-based approach, if you're an extreme person, you're one of the most extreme people, these are the top 5 people for Pisces, they must exhibit some Pisces qualities. Even though we have to look at the entire chart, as astrologers often emphasize, we must see some conspicuous Pisces traits in the most extreme people. And again, we're going to see it's not crystally clear, obvious, using the usual ideas of Pisces, in what way Dick Savitt is really a Piscean, but he is eclectic, and he does preserve different sides of himself, and he won't let any of those sides of himself be negated. This is very Piscean. They won't let one of the fish disappear. Both fish are there. In the example of Boswell, he had his homosexuality, he had his Catholicism. Both are there. He tries to find relationships between them, and he finds historical relationships. In the case of Savitt, we're going to see that he's gifted in athletics, but he also has certain ethical criteria and certain sense of integrity, and he won't let one dominate the other. He won't sacrifice. He holds them both simultaneously. So here's the story of Savitt. He taught himself tennis at the age of 14, which is not particularly young for star athletes. He never took a tennis lesson in his life. Now that's very unusual. So he's self-taught. He played tennis well enough, however, even though he was self-taught, to make the finals of the New Jersey Boys Championship, and for 2 years afterward the National Boys Tennis Tournament, before moving up to the junior ranks. So even though he's self-taught, he ends up being in these championships. His first love was basketball, not tennis. He was an all-state forward and co-captain of the high school team. He entered the Navy, and he played on the basketball team in the Navy. So this was his real love, is basketball. Tennis was his second sport. So despite tennis being his second sport, he won the Texas University Interscholastic League Boys Single Championship. He was 8th ranked junior. So he's doing very well in tennis, even though it's his second most popular, second favorite sport. He was ranked 17th amateur overall, and then from this he zooms to the top, and he starts winning major championships. And at 25 years old, with all the success just falling into his lap, so to speak, he abruptly retires. After winning the 1952 U.S. National Indoor Single Championships. This is amazing. His second sport, he's very, very good. He zooms to the top, wins the Indoor Singles Championship, and he never publicly discussed the reason for his sudden retirement. It's a bizarre story. A self-taught fellow does very well despite his primary love of a different sport, zooms to the top all of a sudden, wins a championship, and then retires and doesn't tell anybody why he retires. It was considered most likely the result was that he was snubbed by the U.S. Davis Cup coach. And they go into some detail about how this coach didn't want him to participate in the championship, even though he was these championship games, even though he was recognized by many people as the #1 tennis player. So he really was snubbed. So is he Piscean? Well, first of all, his life is unusual. I don't know if that's Piscean, but it's unusual. He didn't have lessons. Another thing that's unusual, here I mentioned in the second paragraph, is that he was Jewish, and at the time there hadn't been any Jewish champions before. So that was just a curious sort of coincidence. But it shows, again, the Piscean nature to go and explore and adopt things that may not be part of your tradition. People in that cultural tradition just didn't have a habit of playing tennis. He jokes about it, saying that in his hometown, after he won these championships, a lot of his Jewish neighbors and Jewish community started buying tennis rackets and playing tennis. So there's almost something you would associate with Aries about Pisces. They're just not restricted by their cultural background. There's no reason why people who are Jewish shouldn't play tennis. They're not really related, but people get into habits, and the Piscean people just wander around, not worried about those habits and those structures, and he gets into tennis and becomes, according to some people, for a few years, the best tennis player, at least in the United States. So. Now, interestingly, in the third paragraph, he would not let his professional tennis career and the allure of being a star interfere with his sense of dignity and propriety. So someone basically insulted him. He didn't yell back. He didn't scream. He didn't say anything. He just left. So he was gifted, but he did not let his gift lead to an inflated sense of himself, and he did not let his gift cause him to disregard other things that he thought were equally important or even more important, which is respect and dignity. So he had some kind of mature sense of what's really important in life. This is also Piscean. They let things exist simultaneously. They try to make them work together, but in this case he couldn't make them work together. So he embraced all sides of his life and tried to make them work. We're seeing here a theme of persistence show up very often. Pisces is not necessarily weak and wavering. The two fish are tethered together to each other by a strong rope. So Pisces explores and pursues what it finds interesting. So conclusions from the research. Number one, Pisces embraces things that seem contradictory, incompatible, or unrelated to each other. We see that with Savitt, embracing personal dignity and integrity along with being an extraordinarily gifted athlete. He embraces both, and he does go back and play a little bit tennis later and so on, but he's going to uphold both sides of himself and things that he thinks are important. Pisces seeks a wholeness by bringing together different elements. Pisces has an intuitive sense that one's life cannot be fragmented and no parts of oneself can be ignored. If you're going to completely disrespect and do something idiotic, he's going to uphold that side of himself. Pisces, and same thing with the artist Daumier. He's not going to ignore his talent for sculpture or sarcasm. He incorporates all these different sides of himself. Pisces is not weak and does not lack persistence. Pisces can be logical and analytical. Georg Ohm, certainly. Pisces is always holistic in its approach as it seeks to integrate different perspectives. The different perspectives are held together, but sometimes loosely, with a rope that allows some free movement of both fish, metaphorically speaking. Although these conclusions may not sound correct to many astrologers, I believe that a more evidence-based approach to astrology will advance theory dramatically, and the results from studies using extreme case sampling are very important. A study of the charts listed with 20 points, the 19 points as additional people I listed, is recommended. Somebody could do follow-up studies. So I'm suggesting that a more evidence-based form of astrology would help astrology move forward dramatically. And this is the radical conclusion, not only a radical conclusion about what Pisces may mean, but perhaps even more radical. Number one, here in the first asterisk, first paragraph starting with an asterisk, astrology is primarily based on convenient sampling. Relying on convenient sampling keeps astrology in the dark ages. Number two, extreme case sampling transforms astrology from a belief system to a model where different astrologers can analyze, critique, and develop their ideas from the shared platform of data rather than each person's individual experience. So we have this data. We have these lists of most extreme Pisces people. They become a basis upon which we can develop our ideas and relate it to the evidence rather than each astrologer having his or her own observations and developing his or her own theories individually and separate from each other. So lastly, extreme case sampling is an exploratory method. It doesn't draw absolute solid conclusions as what we call in research methodology hypothesis testing, and it's better than a hypothesis testing for astrology. Excuse me, because we're not ready to do hypothesis testing. We can get tremendous amount of information, more information from 5 charts than we can from analyzing hundreds of charts. This is the almost miraculous thing that we can get with extreme case sampling, is we can do much better than by convenient sampling alone, and do much better than by big complicated studies with huge amounts of data and using statistics. We can get a lot of clarity and sort things out. I think extreme case sampling fits the situation we're in astrology perfectly. There are different research methods that fit different circumstances. And because of the importance of extreme case sampling, we added the online Astro Databank to Series 2.0. There are now over 84,000 charts in Series 2.0. There are hundreds or thousands of things people are requesting us to program, and of all those thousands of things, we made this a priority because we think it's very, very important for astrology to have this capability. I think it's really essential for astrology to move forward. So in this study we analyzed 17,514 charts that have AA accuracy rating that are in the Series 2.0 software. So that was what was used in this study. So we're making some radical suggestions, not only about what Pisces may mean, but how the entire field of astrology can move forward. And convenience sampling is important, but it's not enough, is what I'm suggesting. Also, other conclusions, I think we sometimes try to derive more meaning from zodiac signs than is possible. Most of the themes in a person's life are in aspect patterns, not in zodiac signs and house positions, just suggesting that. So the meaning I'm giving to Pisces is specific and fairly limited, and that may be just the way it is. And also, a curious thing I mentioned before is that there are a lot of Catholic priests mentioned showing up in the list, which fits this symbolism perfectly. Fish are symbols of Christianity. Christianity was the dominant religion during the Piscean age, this idea of ages in astrology. And my view on it is I think that Catholicism is heavily Piscean, at least it was in the Middle Ages, because in the Middle Ages the Catholic Church was the center of education as well as faith in the mysterious. So you had this emphasis on education, learning, factual type stuff, as well as a faith in the mysterious beliefs of the Catholic Church. So it had the extremes, and the results of those extremes are beautifully integrated in the stunning cathedrals, where we have the what architecture and the science of building things combined with the art and inspiration produced stunning beauty, and some of the music is stunning. We also have a lot of the dysfunctional aspects of the Catholic Church where they're upholding certain aspects of things but not being able to make them all work together and relate to each other well. This is a problem of Pisces, that this rope that holds things together is a loose rope, and sometimes things are only loosely related to each other, and the fish can wander somewhat independently and not brought together in a coherent fashion, and you get a lot of hypocrisy and other problems that can happen with Pisces, and we see that in the history of the Catholic Church. Okay, so that's my last slide. That's it. To conclude, a new view on what Pisces means, interestingly closely related to the symbol, the two fish tied by a rope, does not agree completely with some of the modern interpretations of Pisces, with the Neptunian emphasis, and most importantly, trying to make sense of the data and having an evidence-based approach as a way to move astrology forward. And I really think this is radical, and I think it's important. I think it's something we really need to think about in astrology to help transform astrology to a new level. Okay, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.